Efforts to secure an evacuation of the besieged city of Mariupol are underway. Departing from the southeastern city of Zaporizhia, 45 buses are set to provide aid and evacuate civilians from the port city. The International Committee of the Red Cross said Russia had agreed to halt attacks and to open escape corridors. Mariupol has endured some of the fiercest fighting since the start of the war, and for some 170,000 residents still trapped, that means no power and little food or water. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister vowed to do everything possible to help.
We received a message from the International Committee of the Red Cross that the Russian Federation confirms its readiness to open access for a humanitarian convoy to the city of Mariupol, with transit through the city of Berdyansk. 28 buses have to receive permission now to go through the Russian checkpoints in Vasilievka. Also, 17 buses have already left from Zaporizhia. We will do everything to ensure that the buses will get into Mariupol today and evacuate people who couldn't manage to leave the place until now.
Monitoring developments across Ukraine is our correspondent Sasha Vakulina, and she told us that Mariupol remains a key target for Russian forces and heavy fighting around the city is likely to continue.
You could see the map here. You could see that Mariupol is surrounded by Russian forces. Those are the areas where they do have control, and also the areas of advances. The way it looks here in the middle, this is the area, the city center, where Ukrainian troops are still controlling the city center of Mariupol. There's been heavy fighting all over Mariupol with these red circles, We can be sure already now that this heavy fighting is not going to stop for the upcoming days, as the Russians are trying to take over Mariupol on the Azov Sea coast.
Sasha, talking about the rest of the country, you and I have been talking in recent days about the situation in the north, about the fact that military operations didn't de-escalate there despite promises from the Russian side. NATO now also speaking out about that.
Certainly, no. There has been no... the shelling continues. Chernihiv has been shelled again and again. And this is what NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg had to say about it.
According to our intelligence, Russian units are not withdrawing, but repositioning. Russia is trying to regroup, resupply, and reinforce its offensive in the Donbas region.
Russian forces continue to hold positions in the east and west of Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. You could see that now here. In red, these are the areas that they control and the advances. In blue, these are the areas retaken by Ukrainian troops now, with the heavy fighting now happening close to Irpin, the city that's been liberated and taken over by Ukrainian troops a couple of days ago. And with the forecasts by the UK Defence Ministry and also the Institute for the Study of War, there will be more heavy fighting around Kiev in the coming days.
Well, with cities across Ukraine under siege, aid organisations are putting themselves on the front lines to deliver vital supplies to the tens of thousands of people who remain trapped. And earlier I spoke to the International Committee of the Red Cross's Crystal Wells, and she told me how the ICRC are helping people evacuate these war zones.
So our teams are currently in Zaporizhia. They are standing by with the hope that we'll be able to facilitate the safe passage of civilians out of Mariupol. They're there standing by with medical supplies, hygiene items, food, and other relief items for people. And this is just, I can't underscore enough how critical this is that this happens tomorrow. I mean, people in Mariupol have been going for weeks now without food, without water, without medical care, with really the very basics that are needed for survival. And our fear is that if this doesn't happen, time is really running out for people. So our teams are very much standing by and hopeful that we will be able to do this tomorrow. But I just want to underscore that what will be really important for us for this to be able to happen is we will need, obviously, safety guarantees. We will need ceasefires to hold. We will need the parties to agree on specific details like start time and all the rest. And we just very much hope that this comes together and that we can do this safely, because civilians in Mariupol need it.
I want to ask about some of those details. Where will the evacuation routes actually go? Because, of course, people in Mariupol under siege are very scared. Many of them are worried even that they may go to Russia. So how can you reassure them?
I want to be really clear that if there's any evacuation tomorrow that the International Committee of the Red Cross is involved in, it would only happen in a way that is entirely voluntary for civilians. We would never take people somewhere that they do not want to go. So for the International Committee of the Red Cross to be involved, we would basically need three things. We would need to make sure that there are certain safety guarantees in place. We would need to make sure that the parties have agreed to these humanitarian corridors or safe passages, not just in principle, but in really concrete details. Things like what time it starts, the direct route, what time it ends, the conditions of how long the ceasefire will last. And the third is that we would only be involved if this is voluntary. We would only work on this if civilians are willing to go.
So from what you're saying, I understand that the conversation about the security guarantees is still ongoing. How are those talks progressing?
Look, I mean, we have to be hopeful, right? Like, we were hopeful enough to send a team very close today to be in place if this can come together for tomorrow. But at the same time, we're also cautiously optimistic. We tried this, for example, earlier in March. We tried and were ready to open up the route, and hostilities resumed, and we couldn't move forward. It was clear that we couldn't do it safely. So we're just hoping very much that tomorrow will be different, and we will be able to help civilians leave the city if they want to leave the city. But then also it's critical that we get some aid in. Like I said, this team has things like medical supplies, food, hygiene items. So we're very much ready. We just hope that this can happen tomorrow because civilians really need it.